you all for coming tonight and celebrating the Dwight-Derby 15th anniversary since the town block building. So that was 96. And what I want to mention is, first off, the people that are on this plaque are the people that started this house and got it going and formed and came together and made this all happen. And there are a few of these people in the audience. I can see them. And if you know who you are, please stand up so everybody can see you. Please stand up. So those are the people that started the Dwight-Derby House, and since then we've had many presidents and many people do tasks in the house that are very important to Medfield. And so when they first started, and maybe some of the people in the audience could even tell better than me, because I wasn't around at that time, I was just a docent. But the house looked like this. And we had a lot of work ahead of us. So that's just the outside. This doesn't even show the inside. The inside was atrocious. I mean, paint falling down on your head and everything else. Every time before we opened up the house to show it off to anybody, we had to broom the ceiling and, brush all of that paint away, and then sit there and sweep it up because there was so much of that paint hanging down. But actually, we found out that wasn't dangerous. It wasn't actually paint. It was a substance, for the ceiling that wasn't, not bad for us at all. But you can see that the color has changed. The windows, a lot of the windows have been restored. The foundation, we started with that. They started with things that you couldn't even see, and it was, thousands and thousands of dollars that you never even saw. So it ended up that the sills were replaced, and a lot of structural things were done to the house. So that started to happen. Then, after all that structural restoration was done, then they started focusing on the inside. And so today, actually, when you walk through the house, it looks very nice, and it's because of all these people's efforts of restoring each room one at a time, raising the money and going forth with it. So, with that, I would like to tell you that there's a lot of people in this audience that had something to do with that. And so, all of you that have been involved in this house over time, I'd like all of those people to stand up now so everybody can see them.
Everybody up.
Thank you all. Really, you've all really helped out a lot. I must mention again, I have to say something about Harry, because Harry's done a lot of the restoration work. And so if you like the upstairs and how it looks, that all is attributed to Harry. Thank you very much, Harry. Whenever I do a task at the house here, I've always had one person that's always been at my side, and that's Linda Kylie. Thank you. So as we go for our next 15 years, I hope we have as much help, if not more, to continue the same effort that started with some of the people in this audience. And I hope as they walk around that they see that some of the things that they wished came true in the house. There's also some other things that happened recently this year that I'd like to mention, is that we had a connection with the Garden Continuum. And so Nils did a lot of work for us outside with the patio. Is Monique here?
I don't think she's here.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe later we'll point her out if she ends up coming.
Absolutely.
But anyways, they contributed that whole patio and the plantings and everything. It was all donated to us. They made all the arrangements for finding all the people to do that task for us. And it is gorgeous. And thank you. Also, I must tell you that this last weekend, there was a professional photographer here, and she had chosen the Dwight-Derby House as her site to take her holiday pictures out in front of the Winterberry.
Fantastic.
In front of the barn. So you must pass that on to everyone that she thought it was a very beautiful site.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. All right, well, I don't want to go on, because I could go on and on. You probably all know that I could go on and on, but I don't want to do that because Rick really has a good presentation for you, and I think you'll all really enjoy it very much. So without any more to say here, I'm going to introduce you to Rick
Paskowitzin, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
And here he is. And
Okay, thank you.
before we start, I want to tell you just a little story. Maybe you can correct me if I have the story
I
wrong.
ain't going to correct you.
But,
Yeah.
I actually went out to San Diego to research George Horatio Derby. And I deposited all this information at SOHO, which is a preservation group in San Diego, because they were in George's house that he had out in San Diego. So I left them with all this genealogy, pictures of the hat that's in the case there, his sword, and they, in turn, when Rick came to them and said, I want to know who this guy is, they said, well, I know somebody in Medfield that can help you out. And so they gave him all the information, and he contacted me. Then he proceeded to tell me that he was going out to West Point to do some research. And I volunteered to go with them. Then I said, oh my gosh, after I hung up the phone, I'm like, oh my God, I just met somebody on the internet, and I'm going to go on.
Right.
Oh my God, what did I do? So then I went to my husband, and I said, what do you think of this? And he was just so sweet. He says, well, it should be okay. You should go to West Point. And I was like, I'm not really sure. He said, and then, of course, I'm not telling Rick this.
Oh, no.
He totally doesn't know I'm having this. I'm not really sure. So then I thought it out, and I said, West Point. Well, you know what? If anything's a fortress today, it's West Point. You have to check in. You have to check out. There's guards all over the place. If there's any place to meet somebody from the internet, it's West Point. Let's do it.
Right.
So I did, and it was the best experience. We both were very focused on doing the research and gathering the information on George, and we spent from like 8 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon, taking pictures, going through the files. We went through 13 boxes of information on George. And that is what Rick is going to present to you, some of these.
All of it, right. Okay. Okay, in modern terms, that 8 gigabytes of digitized material.
It was unbelievable. But what we did do is find some very interesting pieces of information and very important pieces of information. And Rick is going to present those tonight.
If the mechanics work and the electronics
Rick,
work.
please welcome Rick.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, while this is getting set up, I want to tell you that, it is, a truly an honor to be here at the Dwight-Derby House. I mean that a lot. This edifice is the archaeological embodiment of the source of American humor. Within these walls were received the communications of the father of American wit, acknowledged by Mark Twain to be the father of American humor. Within these walls was received the letter and the map that was responsible for the United States becoming a true continental nation, extending from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, You indeed have a jewel here. Mary Townsend Derby sat within these walls and received from and wrote letters to her son. This place represents, no, is the epicenter of source code for future excellence. For within these walls, these very walls, grew the shoulders on which Mark Twain stood, Ulysses S. Grant stood, and Robert E. Lee stood. This is about, George Derby was raised here. And just to understand the significance of just this one family. It's years before in the Dwight and the Derbys, but George is unknown. And I know Cheryl gives you more information than you think you need, but she understands the importance of this one figure who was raised in this house to American history. Pretty heavy burden, okay? So thank you for doing the work on the house, and thank you for setting the place up, because I think, as we talked before, it shouldn't be owned by one person. It is a community, state, and national important place. And so this is owned, by this town, and it's important. And now it needs to deserve the it needs to get the recognition it deserves. The artistry of George Horatio Derby. Who was George Derby, and why did he die? George Horatio Derby. When he died at age 38, his mother said he died of the same mental derangement as his father. Who was George Horatio Derby? He was a soldier, an engineer, a cartographer, or an artist, a humorist, and a practical joker. His life was short. He died when he was 38 years old. He was known and interacted with Robert E. Lee, General Winfield Scott, William Tecumseh Sherman, Jefferson Davis, and Ulysses S. Grant. He was a classmate of Stonewall Jackson, George McClellan, and the infamous George Pickett, of fame of the Battle of Gettysburg. He was acknowledged by Mark Twain as the father of American humor. He was the father of American wit, and acknowledged by Builder magazine. This is the magazine of the Masons in May of 1924, their issue. He is virtually unknown. He deserves our respect and acclaim. Here are the facts. Born 1823, educated at West Point, and he died at the age of 38 in May of 1861, just over a month after the beginning of the Civil War. Those are the facts. There he is, George Horatio Derby. Okay, he died of dementia versus a brain tumor. I thought this wasn't relevant because it says who's interested in, in mental health, hospitals or anything, but coming here and saying, hey, wait a second, who's involved with mental health, there are other causes of mental difficulties than just being assigned to being crazy. for dementia. Derby's mother said, "My son was as crazy as his father before him, and because he led the dissipated life of his father." The prevailing impression on the Pacific coast that George died of hereditary insanity. But for organic causes, this Dr. Bunkler in Baltimore said he died of cerebral congestion. But Mary Croons Derby, George's wife, said, yeah, he was active in a dissipated life prior to marriage, but years of abstention that followed. And I never saw any kind of thing that led me to believe that relationship with his wife was one of a marvelous relationship. Amaurosis, this is blindness, a doctor diagnosed in 1857 with a letter dictated by Derby. And then the strychnine, which he took for his eyes, produced an excitement easily mistaken for slight derangement. And this was a letter from E.H. Derby in 1859. So there is, I'm going to need somebody's help, okay? This next part of this thing needs, I have a script, and I need a volunteer from the audience to help me with this. Huh? Well, let me pick. Okay, I mean, just somebody.
We didn't rehearse this at all. So.
Okay. Somebody at random or somebody. Okay, thanks for the offer, but I'm going to. Okay, let me look around and see if anything. Yeah, you. Okay. Hi. Thank you for doing this.
Rob.
Okay. Rob Sewell, huh? Okay. And wait a second. Oh. So you have a. How'd you get that script? Wait a second. Before we. The script starts with, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is George Horatio Derby. Okay, but then you'll understand that I have to, you think of me as one person, but, I'm really two people. So this is me, and this is you. Have you ever acted before?
I've never felt like this ever in Medfield.
Okay, my name is George Horatio Derby. I am around from here, from around here. I was born in Dedham, Massachusetts in 1823, the great-grandson of the first millionaire in America. I died in 1861 when I was 38 years old. That's it. What can you accomplish in a 38-year lifespan? Not much if you're one man, but a lot if you are two people. And guess what? I am two people. Let me reintroduce my two selves. My name is Lieutenant George Horatio Derby, Lieutenant, Topographical Engineers, United States Army.
My other name is John Phoenix, also known as Squiball. the father of American wit. All of this 10 years before Mark Twain.
As George Derby, I graduated West Point, 7th in my class. In 1846, my classmates were George McClellan, George Pickett, and Stonewall Jackson.
Hold on, George Derby.
What?
I, as Squibob, terrorized my classmates and professors at the point and got skewered by a sword fight because of my practical jokes. I got my nickname Squibob because I was a small explosive device.
Wait one, Squibob. As Derby, I went off to the Mexican War, and I scouted behind Santa Anna's lines at Cerro Gordo because of my scouting ability. With my fellow officer, a captain at that time, his name was Robert E. Lee or something. We won that battle. Thus, we had the major battle of that war that led to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, thus making California part of the United States.
Hey there, fancy soldier hero. Did you tell them what I called the famous General Winfield Scott to his face? I said, "Yes, sir, General Scat." He did not like that, but it was funny.
Okay. So you got me into trouble. That might have been a part of the reason the Army sent me, Derby, out to California. My job was to survey the Sacramento Valley and to find the site for an Army camp to protect the miners from hostile Indians. You folks might know me because of that Sacramento Valley survey. It is called the Derby Map. I made that in 1849, September to be exact. I also surveyed Camp Far West. I drew out the dimensions, one section to equal 1 square mile, which equals 640 acres. Camp Far West was laid out on the north side of the Bear River. Not much left there now, but a lot of famous people stayed close by. Captain Hannibal Day, Mary Murphy Johnson of the Donner Party, Theodore Sicard, Claude Channock, Kit Carson. The area was so busy in 49 to 50 that a group of investors had me draw out a whole town, the town of Kearney. Didn't amount to much, though.
Hey, Derby, you long-winded precision engineer.
What?
Are you going to tell them what really happened that time in 1849 to 1850? The only thing those miners had to protect themselves from was themselves. Those Indians were all pretty meek and naked, too. Did you tell those folks that you got 2 lots of payment for your Kearney survey? You got nothing. The town, the lots, worth nothing. Did you ever tell them that you were sent to Benicia?
Squibob, enough. You got me into a lot of trouble in Benicia. Okay, describing in caustic terms that little town was a metropolis that was in competition with San Francisco, a wonderful city. Is that the place where you wrote a nasty letter about the ridiculous new uniform of the United States Army? You wrote that letter to the U.S. Secretary of War, Jefferson Davis. I, as Derby, never heard the end of that. Benicia wasn't so bad. I met with Ulysses S. Grant, who was the Army quartermaster. And his partners, we sold pigs to Oregon. It supplemented our Army income.
Derby, you pompous, elitist, super-duper engineer. You thought you were so good when you surveyed the Tulare Valley. Why didn't you tell them about the Derby Dike, the laughing stock of San Diego? They laughed you out of town. So what if your plans were right about redirecting the San Diego River away from the harbor so that silt would not accumulate? Big shot. Your bureaucratic friends would not give you the money it took to do the job right, and the project failed. Of course, I, with my wit, bailed you out when you were sent to Yuma, Arizona. You know the story. You told of the mean soldier who died and went to hell. 2 days later, he telegraphed the folks in Yuma, asked them to send blankets. I, as Squibob, will concede 1 point. You wrote the best topographical notes on the survey of the mouth of the Colorado River. Your trip into the Gulf of California, your descriptions, outstanding.
Oh, Squibob, as long as we're giving a modicum of praise, your Phoenixiana and your Squibob papers are excellent books and funny literature.
Well, Derby, your stuff is not as easily found. The best way I know how to get information about you is through the Dwight-Derby House, and that is not a joke.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay. This is a self-portrait of George at West Point. This is a drawing that he made of studying at West Point. This is the Battle of Cerro Gordo. Okay, the scouting is attributed to Robert E. Lee, and because he was a captain of engineers and scouted on one side of behind Santa Ana's lines, and Derby scouted behind the other side. This came out to show As-sault, drawing by John Phoenix. Okay, the other is a Squibob. The pseudonym of John Phoenix was also for Derby. And he talks about As-sault, meaning that he has this cannon on top of a donkey, and then the donkey doesn't want to move forward, so the gun shoots and makes the donkey go forward, and then the donkey wants to go back. So this is an As-sault. Okay. Derby at Monterrey after the Mexican War. This is a part of the Derby map and other, okay. This is his own talking about he was a topographical engineer. That was his day job. So this is a topographical engineer that you can see, Lieutenant Derby. I mean, there's a whole a series of maps, and this is on a calendar that we have. The cartography that this guy does, I mean, there are 12 maps, 11 maps, on a photo paper that you can see, but it's kind of hard to, to project a map to have you interested in it. Okay, this is at Benicia. It was the first capital of California, was at Benicia. And this is, yeah, so that's the picture that he was asked to do a drawing by Charles Hitchcock, and he did it in like 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, he just said, hey, here's part of his alter ego. This is part of the new uniform. It's kind of interesting. Hey, this is in the 1850s, and so you can see, that what are they interested in, and then the cats, and the cap said he put the design that it would be made like out of common cardboard that you could buy at any grocery store. Okay, because he hated the new type of uniform, or the uniform. And this is, he had a little hook on the back of the clothes so you could hang boots on it, or, and that's the hat. You can see it just wraps around. And then this is the use of, the officers would carry around this thing to prevent the soldiers from going off to deserting to go out to the to pan for gold. This is later on, and this is a wonderful kind of thing that he could do. This is architecture, okay, and this is elevation. The map of Lieutenant Derby with the elevation, okay, and he says that his wife, that was his wife, and in the back, and then her elevation. This is the face of the San Diego River, and this is the map that he drew, and so that it would have processes, like the architecture of the house. You have to start with the infrastructure, and then you add to it. So he did some cofferdams, and so built them right. And then this all went all the way to Congress for the plans of it. And then if it would have been done right, it would have been the way that the diversion of the San Diego River into what it was called False Bay, which is now called Mission Bay. And so people have looked at this and say, hey, this is great, but he didn't get the support from the Polk, from the president then, who vetoed some of these for the funding of this. And then when the first rains came out after he did his first procedure, it was San Diego. He called San Diego Sandy Ego because it's all sandy, okay? And then so that the rains washed down all the sand and then made what he did was a cofferdam to make it look like a dike. And that's why he got this this laughing stock image. And he says he was commissioned to dam the San Diego River, which he did for years afterwards, okay, to dam the river, okay. So these are squabab. These are in the writing. As editor, he took over the San Diego Herald newspaper. The boss, who was an ardent Democrat, was going to San Francisco, and so in San Diego he said, "Hey, can you take over the paper?" Well, he almost caused this election to be lost by the Democrats because he was an ardent Whig, and so he took over the paper, and then it had it's so good that the vote in San Diego was more Whig oriented than any other place in all of California. So these are part of the looking north and looking south at Sand Island. These are islands along the Alabama Gulf Coast, showing where Derby put up 5. He was an engineer responsible for 5 lighthouses on the Alabama coast. And the other thing that is just amazing, this is a depiction of the Colorado River, and he explored the Colorado River. He was a member of the Army, okay, that was on the board of the Invincible, a Navy vessel under the command of A.H. Wilcox to explore a river. And the way they did it, okay, to go up, they proceeded up the river by the tides that were 20 feet either way. And so in the ingoing tides, they advanced up the river. Now this river, now is only a trickle, and all of the islands that he named are no longer there because all the water from the Colorado River has been diverted to the Imperial Valley and to Los Angeles. And Cheryl and I mean, this is, the cruise of the Invincible, documents, okay, it was his journal that he meticulously laid out, describing this adventure on the Colorado River, and with Cheryl's expertise, and then enhancing this pencil-written journal that 160 years ago, got on it, and then in the middle of this journal, was this poem about his adventures on going up the Colorado River and defining the part of the Colorado River that it was incorporated into the map of the definition between the United States and Mexico. And it's still being obviously under controversy. Anyhow, so this is the part of political cronyism, as they were, a great story that about getting a railroad line down central San Francisco that would go 2.5 miles, and all of the people that were involved to do this. The fascinating thing that is relevant today is in San Francisco, they want to do a subway that goes 2.5 miles from city center to Chinatown, because it's a one of these boondoggle political kind of things, because the mayor of San Francisco, his name is Ed Lee, is of the Chinese American community, and so to do that, it's a multi-billion-dollar contract, but it involves a lot of giving out largesse to other people around. And so this isn't just recent. This was done, 160 years ago, because of the he had one guy that did the measurements, and he used a go meter. And so Derby defined a device that would, was the early pedometer that would measure, the distances of, between strides. The only problem was this guy who was fitted out with this go meter, supposedly as Derby describes it, went into a local bar, and was doing, some kind of polka or something like that. So the measurements were way off. Anyhow, so this is one of the designs. He was the patent office was doing all kind of weird things, and so he had designs on that. So I can go on and on. I mean, this is a little thing is that the classic of waving at somebody else, and Mark Twain took almost word for word the sensations of doing the finger associations, and this was from the Petrified Man from Mark Twain. I won't belabor you with this. This is all, so this is a disguised acknowledgement of Derby without Mark Twain saying so. It says, the Petrified Man copied and guilelessly glorified. I saw that he steadily and implacably penetrated territory after territory. This was from Twain's writings. I mean, he didn't put a name in there, but he interpreted that as Derby, or as John Phoenix. And he says, I can remember Mr. Phoenix's daily mailbag continued to be swollen by the addition of a half a bushel of newspapers hailing from many climes with the Petrified Man in them marked a prominent Beltavique. In other words, Derby was really recognized locally around in California. And so it was. This might have been why Derby got this. Mark Twain got this sense that hey, let's have Derby thinking that he was crazy, so that Mark Twain would be elevated and Derby would be diminished. And then, so Mark Twain, he says, hey, I want an autobiography written about me in 100 years to tell really what's really went on, because essentially he was saying everybody, hey, he lied about things. But he says he hated whoever in those days, I could not have gotten more real comfort out of him without killing him. Anyhow, so this is stuff. Here this is interesting. Derby was supposed to have died by sunstroke on the Alabama coast, and then so he was in. Okay, but the sunstroke, so he died in May of 1861. Well, I'm from Alabama. Okay, and if he said, June, July, or August, I could buy into that. But May is not a bad month. And so this is, the euphemism, for whatever. So that, and it's been carried down by one after another of historians to say, and I didn't buy it. So anyhow, so I just, my thesis is, he died of mercury death. And if you want me to go into that, I can, but, or okay, I mean, it might, bore. Okay?
What was the source of the mercury?
Huh?
What was the source of mercury?
Of the I mean, this is, okay, here, three things, or four, I don't know, three. First of all, the lighthouses, the Fresnel lenses, okay, were so heavy and they had to rotate. And if you put them on rollers, okay, they would break the rollers. So they put them on a bed of mercury. Okay, that's one. Okay, the second thing is that George was an avid Mason. Okay, and what part of the rituals of the Masonry, okay, to evoke spirituality was the use of mercury. The third thing, which is fascinating, is that Dr. Rush's blue pill, Benjamin Rush, said, and the major component of Benjamin Rush's blue pill was mercury. Okay, and the culture at that time was, if 2 pills don't work, take 4. Okay, so all of those things, and then Derby he did the scouting of the gold area, and in that scout and seeing the gold mining in operation, and what do they use to extract gold? Mercury. Okay, anyhow. Well, you knew more than, okay, so at least all kind of symptoms. Let me, I've gone, as Cheryl says, as all of you know, when Cheryl starts talking, they say, when can we get her to stop? Okay, hey, it goes from coast to coast because, hey, I'm in the same position on that, so I've got to stop sometime. But I'll leave you with this. I mean, this is to show what the writing, this is Cerro Gordo, okay? And setting the scene, the Battle of Cerro Gordo, Derby scouts behind enemy lines. Robert E. Lee scouted behind enemy lines, but his biographer makes a comment that while he was scouting, he didn't get very far because he was too close to enemy lines, and so he hid under a huge log. Okay, so this was his scouting. Most of the day he was behind enemy lines. So setting it up, and Derby got along, and it has this map that y'all can look at here. Let me. So he writes this, as I said, he writes this letter to his mother, who was read in this house, okay, at that time. It says, "This is a little plan which I made before the attack of the positions. I thought I would not, and rub it out, but don't suppose you will understand it." Okay, and it shows this fundamental battle plan that won this battle. To show in this same letter, okay, is this most remarkable, I mean, he didn't want to blow smoke like many writers or something will get, verbose, Cheryl and I, verbose. Watch how much information he imparts in one paragraph. And what it actually says, and I'll leave you with this. The brigade under the brave Colonel Harney was immediately ordered to charge, and it did charge. And, being attached to it myself, I charged with it. About halfway up, my horse was shot and fell under me with a ball through his hind leg, and I had to tie him up to a tree and foot it up the rest of the way, which was far preferable, as the hill was so steep it was almost impossible to ride. We drove the Mexicans from the first to the second hill, racing after them and hollering and yelling like wild Indians, which last, the hollering and yelling, scared them as much as firing. What a remarkable thing. They made a stand here, but we soon drove them down with a loss of 60 killed and 140 wounded. We lost about 30 killed and wounded. I shot one fellow with a pistol who was about firing. He fell and begged for his life. I told him to lay still and nobody would touch him, and I went on. But when I came back after the fight to help him, I found somebody had killed him. He was some sort of an officer, and I took a sword and have got it somewhere now. This is the type of writing. This is in a letter to his mother that was read right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. Rick has come a long way to be here today. He's from California, from Camp Far West, and that's actually how he got interested in George, is that he saw George's map of Camp Far West. So that's how it all came about. And so thank you very much for that presentation. I do want to add something. Oh, does anybody guess that I would do that? No. This map that he said he sent home to his mother, this is believed to have won the war. That's how important this piece, this document is in our history. This is how we acquired all of the West and the California territory. So this is what George did when he grew up here.
Production support provided by Medfield.tv. Access to our community.